Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger was staring back? That silent war with your own body is a burden many of us know. It's not about the number on the scale, but the weight of shame and the belief that we're not enough. We chase happiness through diets and self-criticism, but it never lasts. This isn't a story about dieting, it's about Brianna and how real change began when she chose self-kindness over self-punishment. Her journey reveals that our obsession with weight often hides deeper pain. Brianna's story is an invitation: put down your weapons, let go of the inner critic, and imagine a life where you're at home in your own skin. This is a map to gentle self-acceptance and the beginning of true healing. Brianna's childhood was carefree. Food was joy, not an enemy, but trauma shattered her sense of safety, and she clung to food control as her only certainty. Anorexia took hold. Every meal became a battle, every calorie a threat. The emptier her stomach, the more powerful she felt, until her world shrank to a cage of isolation. Hospitalization saved her life, but didn't heal the pain at her core. She learned to eat again, but not how to live. The eating disorder's voice faded, but never disappeared. Brianna was physically healthier, but still haunted by the original wound. She was out of the cage, but carried its shadow everywhere. The foundation for her next struggle was set a fragile peace and a hunger for true safety. The war with food was far from over. She had survived, but not yet healed. The next chapter was waiting. Brianna tried to build a normal life: university, marriage, motherhood. She stopped starving herself, but swung to the other extreme, eating to soothe, to celebrate, to numb. Motherhood forced her to surrender control over her body, and the weight stayed. She put herself last, grabbing quick meals, eating leftovers, rewarding herself with food. Her body became a reflection of her neglected spirit, overstretched and tired. At her heaviest, she weighed 240 pounds, but the emotional pain was worse than the physical. She felt trapped in a cycle of shame and self-blame, promising new diets every Monday and breaking them by Tuesday. The vibrant girl she once was seemed lost, replaced by a woman who had forgotten how to care for herself. She was living in a prison of self-criticism, believing she was broken. The struggle was relentless, and hope felt distant. She was a mother and wife, but felt like a stranger in her own life. The weight she carried was more than physical. It was the heaviness of a life unlived. Something had to change, but she didn't know how. The war raged on. Brianna's weight was the physical sign of dreams deferred and needs silenced. She avoided life, waiting to be thin before she could truly live. Dieting became self-punishment, swinging between restriction and binging, each cycle deepening her hopelessness. She blamed herself, not realizing the diets were the real enemy. The exhaustion and isolation grew until she reached a quiet desperation. She knew something had to change, but felt powerless to begin. One ordinary day, sitting in her car, Brianna saw her own sadness and felt a deep exhaustion. She realized, I can't do this anymore. It wasn't defeat, but surrendering the weapons she'd used against herself for years. Diets and self-hatred had only brought misery. The war was the problem, not her body. She made a radical promise: no more dieting, no more weighing, no more food rules. Instead, she would try kindness. The goal shifted from weight loss to self-care. It was terrifying but necessary. She didn't know what would happen, but the old path led nowhere. She chose to treat herself as worthy of care right now. This was the true beginning of healing. She was finally ready to come home to herself. The first weeks were a mix of freedom and fear. Brianna gave herself permission to eat anything. At first, she binged on forbidden foods, but as nothing was off limits, the urgency faded. She began to ask, "What does my body actually want?" She listened to hunger and fullness, eating with curiosity instead of guilt. Self-care became her guide, not just with food, but in all areas of life. She moved for joy, not punishment. She rested when tired, said yes to what nourished her. Gradually, her body changed, not through force, but through kindness. The weight began to fall away, slowly and steadily. Her body, finally feeling safe, let go of what it no longer needed. The paradox: only when she stopped trying to lose weight did the weight begin to leave. The real transformation was internal. She was learning to trust herself. Healing had truly begun. As Brianna's body changed, she discovered something deeper than a smaller size. Her body became a trusted friend, not a project to fix. Cravings became messages, not weaknesses. She learned to listen to her body's needs. Rest, movement, nourishment. Recovery wasn't linear. Setbacks happened, but she met them with kindness, not punishment. Over 2 years, she lost 107 pounds, but the number was just a footnote. The true victory was healing her relationship with herself. She was no longer waiting for life, to start. She was living it, fully present. Her body was a home, not a cage. She could hug her children, walk in the sun, and feel peace. The war was over. She had found freedom, and she was finally at home in her own skin. Today, Brianna's life is transformed, not by weight, but by mindset. Food and body obsession no longer rule her thoughts. She eats with joy, moves with celebration, and sees herself as a friend. Her story reminds us the problem isn't our bodies, but our judgment. Healing starts with small acts of self-kindness, eating mindfully, moving gently, forgiving ourselves. Freedom isn't about a perfect body, but about no longer needing one to feel worthy. The journey begins with a simple question. What's the kindest thing I can do for myself right now? Listen for the answer and trust it.